This is Gene DeLisio with a featured sports interview from WDLB and WOSQ. One of the outstanding girls basketball players at Marshfield High School in the early 1980s was Johnalee Hildebrandt, who scored 860 points for the Tigers between 1980 and 1983. Johnalee led the Tigers in scoring in each of her 3 varsity seasons and helped the Tigers produce an overall record of 45-16 during those years. Johnalee was inducted into the Marshfield Tiger Athletic Hall of Fame in 2013.
For me, it's a very humbling experience. As I told you earlier tonight, I took some time and went down to that Hall of Fame showcase and looked at all of the people that are on there, including yourself, and I feel proud and quite honored to be a part of that group.
You had a great career at Marshfield High School. Can you kind of reflect on your careers, your basketball accomplishments, and some things that stand out for you?
For me, as I stated tonight, my sophomore year, when I remember high school, my sophomore year sticks out, being that I got to play with my older sister, Roxanne. Together we were quite a team. Like, as I said, she played guard and I played forward, and she passed the ball to me a lot. But she was also my biggest supporter, my biggest fan. I do remember, too, that our teams in those days, I feel like there's a lot more pressure nowadays for high school sports. We didn't have to play 24/7, 12 months out of the year. We played in the summer, but it was out of fun, and it didn't have to be something organized. So I think that the kids nowadays have a lot more pressure on themselves than we did back when I played.
I want to ask you about those very early days, even before your high school career began, because you came just after that first wave of female high school athletes. So growing up, maybe when you were younger, an elementary school age student, what kind of opportunities did you have for sports in Marshfield?
Well, you're right, Gene. I hadn't realized how early my basketball career was until I had to start pulling together some information for this, and then realized what pioneers in the basketball that Bonnie and Hank are. But, I went to a private school for grade school, and we actually had a girls' basketball team. And I remember playing the game and falling in love with it. And then Paul Rozak would have camps in the summer. And I can remember attending his camps every summer. I would bike in with my bicycle, and he'd have like 3-hour camps a day and stressed fundamentals. And I can still remember, I've had the opportunity to coach in my later years here after I had children and that, and stressing that fundamental. So a lot of that stuff has stuck with me. But
did it ever occur to you, probably didn't, that you may have been a pioneer, that you were embarking on something new, that young ladies maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 years older than you did not have those opportunities?
No, I guess, to be truthful, I didn't until I found out about the nomination and started looking back as to the years and speaking with Hank and Bonnie about how they had to fight for impartial referees for games. And I just had no clue, because nowadays with kids and all that, there's the WIAA and so many sanctions and so many rules and this and that I don't think we really realized that we were part of that generation.
Well, let's talk about you now going to high school and having the experience of playing high school basketball. Tell us about, maybe as a freshman or a sophomore, what that was like to join the Tiger basketball program and be involved in an organized program like that.
That was a lot of fun. It was, I think at the time, which was fortunate for us, we were drawing very large crowds from the community members in town, and I just remember feeling that pride of looking up in the crowd and seeing all of these people that had come to watch girls basketball. It was astounding to me. As a player on the court, being fortunate enough, especially with girls athletes being as new as they were, to experience that.
So you got the chance to play for Hank Meyer right away. He had some very good success, of course, as a Tiger basketball coach. Tell us about Hank and his coaching and what he meant to your development.
Hank actually taught me how to shoot a free throw. I don't remember if I didn't know when I got to high school or if he just thought that my form was that bad, but I still remember him teaching me how to shoot a free throw, and I must have practiced it an awful lot because I know that was part of my contribution to the team and to the records was that free throw shot. So he obviously knew a lot about basketball, cared about his teams. We all got along so well. I didn't get to play much. I didn't get to play under Gordy, but I know that he was instrumental in helping Hank throughout the teams. And as I said in my speech tonight, it was a tag team for Hank and Vonnie. Vonnie always traveled with the team. She was our mom away from home.
And of course, you had some great teammates. Tell us about some of the teammates, some of the other girls you played for.
Jim McDonald was here tonight, and I remember playing with his sister Jane. We had a lot of fun with Jane. She was just such a sweetheart. We all got along so well, particularly for me, it's again playing with my older sister Roxanne. She was an inspiration to me on and off the court. Even our managers everybody just got along so well and had fun together.
As you mentioned, Johnalee, you have coached the game of basketball for a while now. When you look at the way the game is today and the way it was when you played, what are your thoughts about the differences, the way the game has progressed since you were a player?
Wow. I would have to say it's a lot more physical, and I think there's a lot more pressure put on the athletes themselves today. But as you said, looking at the game from a coach's perspective, so much different than from a parent's perspective or an athlete's perspective. And I gained a ton of respect when I got to coach. Was fortunate enough to coach my children from about 4th grade on up all the way through high school. And both of my children love the game of basketball. And for me, that's probably been some of our proudest moments is watching our children play on the basketball court and also just enjoying the love of the game with them, whether we're watching the game, playing the game, or coaching the game. Because my daughter's even dabbled a little bit in coaching now.
Can you tell us about some of the highlights that you may think about, some games or instances from that era that really are still on your mind today?
Oh, in particular, I remember the heartbreaker when I was a sophomore, again, losing at home to Wausau West, I believe it was. And I think it was just a last-minute shot there. I can remember the next day, the pictures in the newspaper from the fans in the community, the coaches' wives, the players. It was just such a heartbreaking night. But at the same time, you just felt surrounded by all of these people who were invested in the program. It was a good feeling. I remember some away games that got a little physical, if you will, but not in the sense that they are today.
I want to ask you, and this might be an uncomfortable question for you, but if you look back now and analyzed yourself as a player, what type of a player were you for people who didn't see you play back in the 1980s and they say, hey, here's Johnalee Hildebrandt is in the Hall of Fame. What are some strengths that you feel you had as a player?
Gosh, I guess I would have to say that I was a great teammate as a strength. My desire to win was extremely strong. My desire to be personally accountable and personally responsible, just to be the best that I can be. I knew I had to practice. I knew I had to shoot. You
were one of the bigger players, perhaps the biggest player
that Marshfield had, aside from the McDonald girls, I would imagine. So what was the status, or how many big girls your size were there in the Wisconsin Valley Conference back then? What was it like being a post player in that conference?
You know, at that, there were quite a few comparable players. I remember Vicki Anklem, particularly from Anago, was an excellent basketball player at that time. I remember Stevens Point had also some tall players at that time. I think one advantage or a plus for me at the time was, again, during the summertime when I'd attend Paul Rozak's basketball camps, I worked on those fundamentals, and I was a right-handed shooter, so I just always stressed my left-handed ball handling skills. And in the end, it turned out I was a better left-handed ball dribbler and a right-handed shooter, so those things worked for me on the court.
Anything else about your basketball career, Johnalee, that you'd like to mention for us?
No, just once again, I'd like to say thank you to everybody that's involved in sports, from the parents to the athletes to the coaches to the pioneers and the supporters in the community. And even today, thank you.
Former Marshfield Tiger basketball standout Johnalee Hildebrandt, inducted into the Marshfield Tiger Athletic Hall of Fame in the fall of 2013. This is Gene DeLisio reporting for WDLB and WOSQ.